and welcome to the Upper Room podcast. I'm George Crowder, and with me is Jason Pullen and John Drayton. And today, this episode, we're going to be talking about Project Sanctuary, a wide-ranging project about our church buildings and grounds. But before we get to the detail of that, I'd really like to introduce our guests today, John and Jason, and just hear a little bit about them. So let's start with you, John. Tell us a little bit about, well, you're operations director now.
Operations manager. Yeah, that's right.
Get the title right.
Operations manager.
So let's tell a little bit of the story about how you got to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, as a child growing up, I never knew a time when I didn't know the Lord, because my family were Christians. So I grew up in that situation and was always heavily committed to the church I was worshipping at. I was part of the church here when they did the project to look at operational team. And after the first person took the role left, I convinced the rector to give me a go. So that was 8 years ago. So I've been doing this for 8 years now. And I love it. It's a brilliant job. It's the best job in the world. It's a great privilege to work in God's service and to try and help make everything happen that needs to happen in our ministry here at Cheadle.
Yeah, and your background is in construction and trade.
That's right. Before this job, I trained as a plumber when I was 16 years old, left school, went to college, trained as a plumber. I taught at the college after I'd trained. So I used to teach trainee plumbers. And then I ran my own business for about 30 years before this. So I used to employ plumbers. And it comes in quite handy in this job, actually, being a plumber.
Yeah. It's handy that having someone around who knows how to fix things, although I think that can could be a handicap for you sometimes. Yeah,
but it's a great privilege. And it is. I'm well equipped in terms of, plant and site and stuff. So that's great.
So you have oversight of the facilities here. And you do that as it's a church staff member role, as a Christian who's wanting to serve in the kingdom in the church.
Yeah, it's a great team to be part of. We've got a fantastic team, as you know, and it's a privilege to be here. And it involves all sorts of things, and the buildings and plant is only part of it, because there's HR and health and safety, and then all the other stuff. But the plant and site and buildings, I think, is going to be a big thing in the next few years.
Excellent. And Jason, how long do you remember at St Mary's?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, George, but I think it's probably 11 or 12 years. Right. Yeah.
And then does that because you moved around here locally?
We've lived quite here longer than that, but effectively we were really interested in getting the children into the right sort of care and with the right sort of education, really, in terms of sort of Sunday school side.
Yeah.
And I think that ministry really talked to us when we first came. So we enrolled Tiago and Julia, my kids, and we've been here ever since, really. And Tiago this year goes to university, and Julia's still hopefully going to be confirmed in May.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big tick of success. So
right. And your own Christian story, what's your background?
Well, my own background is quite funny, really. So I was born in Sussex, and I lived at the top of a hill, an enormously high hill. And at the bottom of that hill was a church called St Elizabeth's. And St Elizabeth's was a remarkable church. It's a huge church. It's cathedral size. And it had a really beautiful choir. And my brother convinced me it would be a good idea for me to join the choir along with him, because we could earn 50p at funeral and 25p at the time for every wedding that we'd sing in. And that's how we got our sort of pocket money. So then I got introduced to Christian fellowship. I got paid to partake in the choir. So there you go. That's how I started with that journey. And then obviously I've continued that journey of faith as I've gone along, and probably drifted off when I was going to university, and then drifted back. And they really got my brother, because he actually became a minister. So it's been quite a journey.
And your background is also of interest in that you've had a background in projects, and then facilities management, commercial sector management. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, of course. So I after studying at university, I I effectively went into consultancy, and then from there into sort of asset management, property development, and that sort of stuff. And then I really focused, and my career has mainly been around regeneration and property development and asset management. So it's been quite a privilege, really, and I've had the privilege of working on lots of big projects and small projects. And one of those we got talking about, George, when we were chatting about, and I was particularly proud of, was the regeneration that I did in the city of Gloucester. And I was proud of it in the sense that it created 3,500 jobs, and it regenerated and helped to regenerate the historic docks there in a city that was really on suffering. But the most important and amazing thing, really, that's led me to this and to different things was that when I was working on that regeneration, I worked with Stephen Lake, who was the Dean of Gloucester at the time, and he became the Bishop of Salisbury, and he worked on a project called Project Pilgrim, which was the cathedral project there in Gloucester, where they were trying to renew the cathedral, and we worked together in the regeneration of the community and in terms of supporting that project. And it was amazing to be part of something that was really sort of God focused and leading to regeneration in the community, and a holistic plan for the town centre and for the church, doing more than being inward looking, being external looking. And it was full of challenges, but it really inspired me to put my head above the parapet here and elsewhere, and it inspired me in my career, really, and in my career choices. Yeah,
that perspective and that background was the thing that put this on your radar in the first place. But let's just rewind a bit to John's story about this project. And John, you've been nagging me since I got here, but I think you've been nagging about doing something about our beautiful church building for some time. But tell us about that.
Well, I mean, we are very blessed because the architect that is responsible for the 5-year inspection did say to us that for a grade 1 listed building, it's in better than average condition. I think it has been quite well maintained. But very early on in my time here, so about 6 or 7 years ago, we had the electrical inspection, and the then inspecting electrician said, this is going to need rewiring. So I have been telling the PCC that for about 6 or 7 years. And then the next inspection came 4 or 5 years later. He just said, I can't give you a complete certificate on this because the wiring is in such poor state. So it's not actually dangerous, it's just in danger of failing catastrophically, in the point that we'd have no power in the church. So there's that, but there's lots of wider aspects to it that, we have the possibility of making the church probably self-sufficient in terms of utilities. Even though it's a grade 1 listed, the diocese are really keen for us to try and do this work, because the heating system is gas-fired and it's quite effective. It's one of the most effective heating systems I've ever come across in a church, because I used to do quite a bit of church heating. Because they're unusual buildings. They fall between all the normal things of domestic, commercial, industrial. They are completely different. And you normally only want to heat them 1 day a week. So we're going to have to do something with the gas heating as well. And we have got the potential of fitting heat pumps, which will make it very energy efficient, and solar panels on the roof. And as you say, George, I always want the Rolls-Royce solution, but it'll save us an awful lot of money. And it would be a good system, and the diocese are very keen, because there aren't any churches in the diocese who've actually done this work in this way. And I think we're very unique in the sense we've got warm air heating, which is quite unusual in churches, which is very effective heating. Most people know that. And we're also quite well placed. We've got quite a lot of interest from the local community, the local council. So I think we're in a good position to consider doing this. And we will have to do something about the gas heating. And the diocese won't let us fit another gas heating unit.
So we came at it from the urgency of needing to replace some very essential items, but not the sort of things people get genuinely very inspired by, or maybe more inspired by the ecological heating solution. But then I started to talk to Jason about it, wonder about his perspective when he told me his story about his background, and it started to be something that we could think, a bit bigger about the whole building, because it does, like you say, have a central position in the community. It is like a magnet for people. It just seems to suck people in. It's stunningly beautiful. And the really positive relationship we have with community agencies and local government, it seemed like an opportunity to use that as a core for maybe thinking a bit bigger about a project like this. And that's where Jason came in, and then you started thinking, what could we do, thinking more holistically.
Yeah, thank you, George. I started to think about what we could do more holistically, and it was actually started with listening to what the community were saying, how they're using it. And I don't know, every time I go into the church when it's not a sort of service, you always get visitors asking if they can come and look at the church. It's amazing. It's every single time. There's so much engagement.
And John's the same.
Yeah. Honestly, it's incredible. And just last week, I was having to sort of do that, and 6 American tourists literally said, "Oh, can we have a little walk around and tour in interest?" And I think sometimes when we're in our little worship bubble, in our little community bubble, we forget just how important the church and the church history and building is to a lot of people that may be Christian or not coming as regularly, or just the general community. So when we started to think about the project, it was like, well, we've got to do these urgent things, absolutely, but we also are very blessed in the building that we've got, and maybe we take a moment to re-pray on it and really think and discern about where we're going to, because small steps, like, to support us opening the church up more for the community, can make a huge difference. And so we started to sort of shape it, give it a vision, broaden that vision to allow us to effectively get as much grant funding as we could, and to engage best with us as a worship community, but also the wider community. And that's where sort of Project Sanctuary started naming it and broadening it and thinking about what we need and what we want. And that's where our church, our place, started to sort of come in, and we're looking forward to getting the results of that and getting feedback on.
Tell us about our church, our place.
Yeah. So as I said, it's the start of a conversation, broadening that appeal and wanting people in the church, but also outside the church, to start to consult and have that conversation with us. What do they find are the blessings of the building? What are the difficulties in terms of access and inclusion? How can we start to address those? How can we celebrate the great things? So we've got the feedback coming in on a digital survey, but we're going to have lots of different points where we're trying to talk and communicate, podcast being another, with everybody, so that we can get that real direction and elevate the project by doing small things that don't necessarily cost a fortune, but really make our church a more welcoming place, a more inclusive place, and ecologically a better place, a more sustainable place. So we're doing that, and we're hoping to get that sort of feedback from everybody, and look at trip hazards, and if there's anything that we can do or think about that will make it more inclusive, help disabled people have better access potentially, or a whole host of ideas that are possible, that don't necessarily have to cost the world, but just need thought, time and energy, and a committed sort of team to really sort of buy into that vision, and hope to open up the church to different folks, really, different people.
And we've talked about the 4 aspects that we've kind of brushed across, haven't we? There is the environmental aspect of making the church sustainably efficient. There is the accessibility aspect, making the church accessible for all people. There is a very big heritage aspect. This is a beautiful old building that almost defines the area for people, and still does. I mean, it was designed to stamp the gospel on the area, to make such a huge impact. And it's kind of, when you think about regenerating, we want to revivify that. And the 4th aspect is what comes of that, the sense of community that it feeds into and glues together.
Yeah.
that we want to embrace. Those are the four aspects, aren't they?
Yes, and they're captured in the objectives, and we're getting the feedback. But also, it's just about learning. Our Church, Our Place is about learning more about the church in itself and its evolution. Really, it's a place that's been, central to the community for 500 years plus. It's been a place of faith. As part of Sanctuary, we've looked at sort of the heritage there and how that fits and how that looks. And it's been quite a journey for me personally. So I really was unaware of a lot of the sort of history of the church, and how wonderful and how it showed a Christian journey really, until I started looking at it for the project. So there's a lady called Catherine Berkeley, I think it's how you pronounce her name. And I saw mention when I was looking at the church really of her in regards to sort of the altar area, and it had mention of her, and I just started to look at her journey, and it said privately funded the altar on the building, and she's a really interesting character. She was sort of born locally and to a privileged family, and she was a lady actually, but she gave that up and then took a life of faith and moved to Oxford, and she became a nun. And when she became a nun, she then effectively rose all the way up to be in charge of the abbey, and she dedicated her whole life to Christian service and worship. Then the storm came, because her whole life of giving everything to the abbey and to looking after the sisters and all the rest of it came to a head when the Reformation happened, and Henry VIII effectively started to close down all the monasteries. And this is where you pick up her trail, and it's really interesting because she's got letters legally opposing the closure of her monastery and the end of all the sort of sisters and her whole life in faith there. And obviously that didn't work out, and the Reformation happened, and even though she legally protested, her abbey was closed. At that point, I think my Christian self would be really thinking about my faith and how that looks. Your whole life has been dashed, your whole work has seemingly been upended, and yet she actually came back to Cheadle. And her legacy really began then, because even though she was an old lady when she came back, she was so humiliated by the process where they closed down the abbey, etc., that they gave her a pension. She used that pension to pay and help contribute to the church here in Cheadle. And that's why we've got the altar area, etc., that we have today. So she helped to fund the tower room and the end altar area and all of that area, and that's why it's sort of mentioned in the historical record. So it just shows you how the church itself has evolved and changed. Then the next big project was around 1877 when the Victorians all started to evolve it. I feel like we're really standing on the shoulders of so many amazing Christians and history and heritage, but they're not something that's just in the past. I think it's a living, flowing thing through the building and through the community, and I think Sanctuary is just another evolution of that. And talking to people about that heritage and the evolving of the building. It's not a stale place, it's a place of community fellowship and worship, and that is where I think Sanctuary could be really interesting, and I think it can be so engaging, and it's just an absolute privilege. So next time, if you're in church, or just take a step back and actually think about how it's evolved through the time, and then also for your feedback, how you think it might evolve again to support faith and break down the barriers to faith, and really look at that.
And John, knowing you love to serve God in a practical way, and you love the church to be the beating heart of the community. As Jason's kind of joined us on this project with his perspective, how have you been feeling? How have you responded?
Oh, it's real encouragement to have Jason chairing the group, because he really gets the vision, and he's brought this holistic view to it, which I don't think I had. I was looking in terms of fixing the bits that are broken, and he's looking at a far wider context. And, you do have to consider that there's centuries of years of faithful worship and prayer that have been, prayed into the building. So it's a real place of faith. But no, it's great to have Jason on board with his vision and ability to understand how the project could be put together, so that people can really get hold of it. And we've seen that already. There's better engagement with Project Sanctuary than we could have expected if we just talked about rewiring the building.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about rewiring and new heating anymore, are we? There's all sorts of possibilities which you're getting quite excited about. Tell us about some of those.
Well, I mean, the architect said last time he inspected the building that we were going to have to consider long term, so over the next 10 years or so, that the stonework on the outside needs work. And that's very evident. If you look over the main door, it's quite badly eroded, probably acid rain and just wind and weather. So there's stonework needed, but some of the major walls on the outside need that kind of work as well. So there's all the stonework to think about. But as part of the project, if we do the heating work, it would be possible to consider reordering the churchyard and making that a properly accessible green space.
Because of the plant that's required.
Yeah, we're going to have to locate something in the churchyard. But the churchyard at the moment, again, it attracts a lot of people and a lot of interest. But when it's wet or icy, it's a really dangerous place to be because the gravestones are very uneven and they're incredibly slippery. We have some, wonderful members of our church who spend hours every week working away in the graveyard, keeping it in a moderately safe, accessible condition. But they can't do anything about the gravestones. So we could consider that as part of the work and make a space, where people can come for quiet and reflection, have a decent space for remembrance, and just make it accessible, because it's a beautiful space, and it's probably the largest green space in Cheadle, without proper access. So
this is remarkable. I mean, it's not just the building's remarkable. There are more vaults in the graveyard. There are some listed parts of the graveyard. There's some very ancient things in there, and it's that idea of a community space has started to kind of inspire thought about the building and the grounds around it. And we're thinking about how it can be a gift to the community, a connection point. We've not mentioned lighting. In that if we rewire the building, we will redo the lighting, which opens up the building remarkably more than we might imagine as a community space. We've had some goes at putting on events in there. It is the largest space in the community. It's a beautiful event space, and we're thinking more in terms of what we can offer, aren't we?
Yes, that's right. So we're thinking about what we can offer and how that can work. And as you said, George, it's the largest such place available for the village, and I think it actually is really important there. And so we're thinking about, well, if we had the right lighting and sound system and better security so we can open up the church more, then how could we bless the community more? Could we do more of the sort of comedy nights that we've been doing, or more of the interest nights, or then we're doing an Agatha Christie event in due course. Which is sold out. Amazing, isn't it? And then can we have music events?
That wasn't us. That was the Civic Society.
No, Civic Society.
Well, we provided the space though.
But we provide, and that's where we can work so well. We're not trying to say that we're going to be doing all of these events, but we're wanting to be able to provide the community with the space so that they can do it, and so that they can engage. And they could be all different kinds of events within reason, obviously, and they need to be approved. But why couldn't we do more? And that's the hopefully part of the outturn of the project is a reordering of the inside the envelope in terms of the church and how the lighting and how it fits and works, so that it better suits doing events and hosting stuff and being open more and more accessible.
And that's where the Our Church, Our Place survey comes in, because that will definitely inform how we go about that, won't it?
Absolutely. And then as we're talking to in the churchyard, the same thing sort of applies with that green space. We clearly need to be honouring the memorial garden and having that community green space and honouring it there, but making it safer for people to use is a key priority of the project. And I think that's where Sanctuary was starting to sort of pull together that look on the what works in the inside of the church and how it can benefit the outside as well, and how it can all sort of fit together. And I think we've done a good job so far of starting to pull that together, but it really needs people's support and focus
Yeah.
to give us that direction. And as I said, if we're finding that we've got some sort of trip hazards and bits and bobs that we need to deal with, that doesn't have to cost a fortune, but it can make a big difference to some of the more vulnerable people in the congregation. Or if we have hearing loops that we need to sort of look at. So there's these three big strands: the environment, access and inclusion, and that setting and education side, where we're starting to tell people about the church, its heritage, and its importance to them and the community, really. And embrace them, really. So it's a very exciting project.
And we're already. I mean, we are going to open the church up on a daily basis relatively soon, aren't we?
Almost there for that. Yeah. Been a few things in the way, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be in a place where we can open the church daily and leave it unattended. I mean, that's the key thing. The insurers tell us it's safer that way than a building locked up all the time. And as Jason said, and I've always experienced, every time we go across the building, people want to get in. So I think there'll be a large footfall through the building, which brings more people into the experience of the church community, and allows us to tell them more about what's going on here, both in the life of our Christian life in the church, but also in our aims to develop the site in the way that we've been talking about. Hopefully in the next week or two, that'll be.
It's a very exciting project. We have a remarkable space to work with, a space that brings the community together, that draws the community in, that gives us such a gift as a church to be a blessing to the whole community. I'm so grateful to you gentlemen for all the expertise and wisdom that you've brought to this, and the momentum that we have now for Project Sanctuary. So thank you so much for all you've said, and thank you for listening.
Thank you
very much. Thanks, George.
Thank you.